Sohlberg. Oh, sorry, it was just the recording notification. I'm thrilled to be presenting my paper today on the complicated relationship between sleep, social media, and mental health. It is a literature review, and without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so starting off, sleep is an incredibly important aspect of physical health and mental well-being, and especially in adolescence. So it's, yes, no surprise, as you've said, Maya, that this is a very hot topic today. But specifically what I wanted to study is how screen time and social media has an effect on that, because those seem to be also becoming far more pervasive and sort of prevalent in today's society. So the aim of this research paper is to investigate the relationships between adolescent sleep and pervasive forms of screen time, such as social media, as well as what effects they can have on adolescent mental health. So as for methodology, this is a literature review. So literature was compiled from various sources across Google Scholar. Keywords were used such as habitual checking, frequent use, as in with regards to smartphones, you know, the urge to pick up a smartphone, even during bedtime hours, can keep a lot of teens up. So that was one search term: mental health, attention span, sleep, academics, social cognition, adolescent, and social influences. As for some literature review, a term I use in the paper repeatedly is delayed sleep phase preference, which essentially means that some adolescents are biologically inclined to stay up late and wake up later, even outside of external influences. So even outside of you have to stay up late for a game or a certain extracurricular activity, it's just certain teens are biologically predisposed to go to bed late and wake up earlier than just normal people. So, it doesn't help that many schools nowadays are starting super early, and then your full day is packed full of extracurriculars and you barely have time to go to bed at a reasonable time. And as for previous studies have explored delayed sleep phase preference and other ways sleep deprivation has been caused among today's teens. However, there is a need for more concrete research, which I will get into in the conclusion. But essentially, the content of the paper is this: do adolescents get enough sleep? Current research has established that the answer is no. And cited reasons would include the aforementioned delayed sleep phase preference, external factors such as school extracurriculars, and naturally occurring tendencies for adolescents, varying sleep patterns within the age group. And what that essentially means is that I found through my research that apparently even within the range of adolescence, which is about like 14 or 13 to 17 years old, even just within that range, there's biologically a sleep pattern can vary a lot, which makes it very hard to predict in terms of society and where it would be appropriate to go to bed or wake up. As for adverse effects of poor sleep, and essentially why this is such a big problem, is there's a lot of different factors. Cognition is the first one. Cognition is important in teens as it is any human, referring to their ability to complete basic tasks, learn, comprehend, etc. And sleep deprivation has a negative effect on cognitive performance and focus, and even emotional processes in the brain. For example, sleep deprivation has been associated with increased amygdala activity, which is a part of the brain that is associated with emotional processes. And this may be why a commonly cited symptom of sleep deprivation is increased irritability, because your emotional centers are more stimulated. So that's just one effect. Another adverse effect is mental health. Numerous studies pointing to anxiety, even bipolar disorder, also depression, psychological distress. All of these are tied to basically any amount of sleep deprivation could lead to these symptoms. And it actually exacerbates them because, many teens are aware that sleep is an issue, and, you need to get around 8 to 10 hours is what is the standard for most web articles. Basically, most health databases recommend 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night, especially for adolescents. So what happens is they'll get anxious about these things, and then that causes them to get less sleep, and it's just a vicious cycle. So and that sort of ties into another adverse effect, which is risky behaviors, violence, alcohol, marijuana use. All of these are tied to also sleep deprivation. And as for what screen time and social media have to do with all of this, there is, I found, a difference between screen time and sleep time and quality, as in both affect sleep differently. But a common limitation of all of these studies is they don't really determine the type of screen time that is being displayed. So you can't really quantify. It's only quantitative. It's not really qualitative. So still, as for different forms of screen media, basically studies have shown, if I can, to here, basically, the gist is that TV and video games, first of all, they did separate it based on gender. And what was found is that teenage girls were more likely to suffer these adverse effects that were mentioned earlier, as in terms of depression and anxiety, just from screen time and sleep deprivation in general, but especially social media. And what was found is that boys did not experience the same like degree of these disturbances, and that's likely because of the, you know, the forms of screen media that are more likely consumed by each group. So basically, this study highlighted that basically greater than 2 hours amount of time spent on social media resulted in a significant increase in depressive symptoms and an increased chance of even self-harm for girls, while in boys, there was no significant correlation with social media use. Interestingly, for neither gender, there are associations to gaming, texting and emailing, and TV and video, implying that social media is the paramount damaging screen media source. As for conclusions and wider implications, so of course, the primary conclusion of this study is that the myriad of negative health effects of poor sleep are exacerbated by screen time, both through its effect on sleep as well as the direct effects that screen time has on mental health. As we saw earlier, social media is very harmful more often than not. So there is more nuance, however, I found among these studies. So differences among gender, while it was somewhat explored, very few studies actually managed to sort of, they very few delve into that difference. I feel like as terms of future research, that's definitely one thing that could be built on. As for other limitations, as many of these studies are a few years old, a couple of years old at this point, even that with how fast technology is progressing, in the modern age, you know, there's completely new types of screen media that are basically available to us, and especially adolescents. So new forms of media like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, all these short form content, these have not been addressed in any of the studies that I found in my research. So that's definitely one way that this could be built on in the future, is delving into this. As for how it can be addressed, it's a very difficult situation because societally, we have systems in place that, you know, require one to go to bed at a certain time and wake up at a certain time. So despite the biological necessity of sleep deprivation and, you know, getting enough sleep, it's very hard to change, you know, the current institutions we have in place, such as schools or job start times, extracurriculars, etc. However, as more research is done, there's a hope for a better understanding of the constantly evolving intersection of adolescent sleep, screen time, and social media. Hopefully, there will be an increased emphasis on sleep hygiene in education so that this can be built on in the future. Anyways, thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here today to present this, and I hope you enjoyed.